Science Headliners. Please welcome our host from Linda Hall Library, Vice President for Public Programs, Eric Ward.
From June 25th, 2023 to July 6th, 2024, 4 crew members spent a year in isolation as part of a simulated NASA expedition to Mars. Known as Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog, or CHAPEA 1, it was the first of 3 such planned missions. Joining me today is Dr. Nathan Jones, a board-certified emergency medicine physician from Springfield, Illinois, who served as medical officer of CHAPEA 1. Dr. Jones, thank you for taking the time to visit with me today, and welcome back to Earth.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And NASA has had astronauts in space for a year before. So what was the goal of doing this particular type of mission?
So I think the biggest thing is just wanted to integrate all of the various different science that they've been working on as we plan for our endeavors further out in space. And besides that, it is true we've had astronauts in space for a year. At the time of this recording, 371 days is the current record by astronaut Frank Rubio. And so we have been there for a year before, plus. But we've never been with the sort of isolation that this mission experienced. And so if you look at missions such as his, you'll see that there were crew members coming and going the entire time. There were frequent resupplies of mission necessities, those sort of things. And so we've never really had a situation where it was the same crew for that long of a period before, and it was isolated to just that crew.
Now, we just came out of COVID a year or so ago, or maybe COVID's still around, but of course you have a full-time job and family. What was your interest in making that personal commitment and applying to be part of the mission?
So, I looked at the sort of what they were looking for in a crew member, and I thought, I seem to have like a lot of unique experiences in my life that would suit me well towards a mission like this. And I saw the scientific need for it and thought, hey, this would be a really great way to contribute.
Where did you live and work during the year? You were in a facility called Mars Dune Alpha. What was that like?
Yeah, so it was great. There was a building at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. And what they essentially did is they said, hey, when we go to the moon and to Mars, what would a habitat there look like? And thinking about the fact about how difficult it would be to send the entire habitat one piece at a time, the way we built like the International Space Station, especially at those distances, it would be extremely difficult. So one of the current ideas is to actually take just a large 3D printer and to print the habitat. And so what they did is they brought in a extremely large 3D printer and they used the equivalent of Mars dirt to print a habitat out of it. And that's where we
Interesting.
lived for the year.
What was a typical day and week like? What was the schedule? What kind of experiments or things did you work on during the year?
So uh, the week long sort of experience was very similar to what you would expect on the current International Space Station sort of missions. And we basically had our days organized from to the 15 minutes or maybe even less at times. And so everything is very structured and pre-planned by mission control. But essentially, we'd get up at 6 a.m. every day and lights out at 10 p.m. The first hour we were up would kind of just be to kind of get ready and have a sort of team meeting to go over the day's plans and everything. And then the day was filled with various things such as science activities. You might be looking at like geology or that sort of thing that would be Mars relevant or moon relevant in future missions to that planet. And then you might have various 3D printing tasks or maybe maintenance throughout the day, public affairs outreach activities. And then we also had some personal training moments where we were given time to basically study and learn things. During those times, I chose to work on playing guitar. I learned some languages such
Oh,
as Spanish and Russian. Also learned, actually, I had done some coding in the past, but I took a coding course during the year as well. So really took use of those times. And of course, there were times for exercise, um, building maintenance, and self-hygiene and communications.
And you also participated in Mars walks, they call them. As part of the facility, you could simulate going outside of the building and doing EVAs,
Yes, that's
right?
absolutely correct. So one of the large parts of this mission, we're looking at EVAs. If you look at the current experience in space that the NASA astronauts experience, they only go on very rare EVAs or spacewalks. And so when we go to the surface of the moon and later to Mars, we expect that there will be a lot higher demand or need to go on those Mars walks. And so they wanted to look at just how that would affect the crew and so we did have an experience going on over 100 EVAs during our
Wow.
mission.
And you also grew your own food, right? How did that
Yes,
how did that turn out? And
yeah, so at various times in the mission, we had the opportunity to grow some crops, and they certainly wanted to study the science of how that affected the crew, health-wise, morale-wise, and the psychology of it, how difficult it was. Now, understanding that compared to the International Space Station, this was on Earth, and we had Earth gravity, so it probably was a little easier for us in many aspects than it would be for them. But looking at the moon and then Mars, you're going to have gravity there, and so. I don't think it was quite as big of a difference, but we really did enjoy having the crops because if you can imagine 378 days, which is the duration of our mission, being locked up with no fresh foods, it was it was really something that was helpful for us.
oh, I bet. And you could just you watch it grow, and I mean that would just help pass the time as well. You mark the calendar by that.
Yeah, I think one of the crew members said she was actually naming the various crops. So
But then you have to eat them. So,
yeah, then you gotta eat
um,
them.
and you had a comms delay too, right? It wasn't just instantaneous communications. They NASA actually simulated what 15, 20-minute delay in communications.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So from a science standpoint, our communications are essentially, using the speed of light to send electromagnetic impulse, and so currently our connection speed to the moon and to Mars are about the equivalent of dial-up speeds. So as you can imagine, there's some bandwidth issues that you're going to run into there. Now, I do know that NASA has been studying. I don't know if you saw in the news last year, they sent a cat video like 100 million miles across space to Earth, but so they're
Yeah.
working on improving some of those things, but currently it's pretty much restricted to dial up, not it's actually just yeah, the old modem connection speeds there. And so that was one issue. But on top of that, as I mentioned, the bigger problem is just that fact that Earth and Mars are so far away from each other, it takes that long for a signal to get there. And so when you try and transmit data, that's how long it's going to take. And at its further distance, you're looking at 22 minutes. So, Earth is on one side over
Wow.
here, the sun's where my head is, and then Mars is way over here on the other side. And in fact, at some point during the journey, the sun is sitting right in between, and you're not going to get any messages through during that time.
Wow, that would certainly be a challenge. All right, you have a degree in molecular and cellular biology from the University of Illinois and a medicine doctorate from Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. When did you become interested in pursuing a science and medical career?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was always probably interested in science and medicine, but I really can pinpoint the moment became interested in it to in my childhood. My dad is an eye doctor, and he helped start a medical mission, and so he was always involved in taking medical care to other countries and other people. And so I started going with him on those trips whenever I was probably 10 or 11
Oh, that'd be
and
cool.
really
Yeah.
just fell in love with it and really wanted to go and just make a difference and have an impact on the world and that's what drew me into it. And emergency medicine in particular, I thought would be useful just because so versatile as far as the different things that you can use those skills for.
Yeah, and I bet you show up for work every day and you have no idea what what's going to hit you that day. And
And that was another thing that I think was particularly helpful for NASA to use in a mission like this. As you can imagine, they pick people to go on these sort of missions and into the future to the moon and Mars who are healthy. And so you hope you don't really need a doctor there on site, right? And so, as you can imagine, whether you're even a doctor, an engineer, or a scientist, like those skills are helpful, but the most
sure.
important skill is being able to take the way that you learn and apply things through your degree and using those on a mission like that. So I can be a useful scientist. I do have a science background in molecular and cellular biology, but I can be a good scientist. I don't know anything about geology, but I learned to become a geologist during the
Hmm.
mission. And just taking and applying those scientific principles and the way that you learn to all the different things, I think is a very useful skill.
What advice do you have for students interested in pursuing a STEM career?
Yeah, so I think that STEM careers are absolutely valuable, and I would encourage anyone who's interested to definitely explore those and what exactly the best fit is for them. There are so many different careers in STEM, and just different personalities are going to settle into different ones. Just kind of find, I would say, your herd, and just go at it and give it your best. I think that if you can get involved in it early, just the way you kind of model the brain and learn to do those things is even helpful. So if you're interested in it, certainly jump in early.
And probably take a variety of classes in high school and find that interest.
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's end the conversation with my three for the road. Just three quick questions. Give me the first thing that pops in your head. The first question, on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, what's the cool factor for your kids having dad part of the Mars mission?
Probably 11.
Okay, that's what I would think. Yeah. All right. Besides your family, of course, what was something that you looked forward to doing after the mission? Was it a food or activity? Was there something that's like, boy, I can't wait to do this?
I had a couple, and one of them I still haven't done. But the first one was I wanted to see a sunrise. I was just really looking
Oh,
forward to
yeah.
that, and just feeling the sun, that radiant heat on your skin is such an amazing thing that we kind of forget about, and we're just in and around, especially when you pop out of the mission and you're in Houston and it's the summer in July and it's super hot. So immediately, was less interested in the sun than I was in the mission, but missed it a lot. And then the other thing was I really wanted to go swimming in the ocean, and I have not had a chance to do that yet.
Oh, you were right there close to
I,
Galveston.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was so close, and we would have made it, but right after the mission ended, we got hit by a hurricane, and it
Oh,
really squeezed our timeline and everything, and just didn't get a chance to make it down there. And you're right, it's so close, but that's just how busy our post mission
oh,
period was.
sure. Yeah. All right. And finally, when will there be human footprints on Mars? If you have a year in mind or a range, was 5 years, 10 years, do you think?
I think that the current presidential administration and NASA have both stated a goal of at the end of the 2030s. And so I think you're looking at like 2040 probably as a projected time frame. And I think that's reasonable.
I'm looking forward to watching that and following that. Are you, and well, let me slip in a fourth question. Are you going to apply to go on one of those missions to Mars? Or would you
I think I'd
apply?
have to have a good conversation with my family. They were very generous to let me have this experience. And, if you look at it, for the astronauts and missions like ours, it's not just a 378-day mission. It's so much more than that, when you look at the training. But I would say
Oh, sure.
that this entire experience for my family was already like a 3-year experience that kind of just dominated our the back of our mind. We're working around it for vacations and holidays and all those sort of things. So I would love to do it, but I think there would be a really difficult conversation with my family.
Yeah, again.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
right.
well, Dr. Jones, thank you so much for taking the time today. I enjoyed following along the mission, and yeah, congratulations on the successful mission.
Yes, thank you so much, and I appreciate everyone's interest in NASA's mission in particular and our crew as well. Thank you.
Science Headliners has been made possible by the generous donations you make to the Linda Hall Library.